Okay, so I want to describe something. I realize that every time I spell the word seizure, I'm spelling it wrong. I understand that. When I look at my medical paperwork for the last, all the way back in Lowell, they gave me paperwork that said seizure. Obviously, I was on some medications or drugs, so they weren't quite sure what was causing them. They probably blamed it on the drugs or whatever, as well as there was plenty of activity going back 25 years. But I've only been looking at into this, I don't know, about 2 to 3 years before I moved up here. I started looking into it with doctors and emergency rooms and some of the neurologists at the emergency rooms. But at the time, I had to handle my addiction. So that wasn't going to work. I had to go through and look inside myself. I had to make sure that I inventoried every single time that I had a seizure or neurological activity, as well as I knew what my mother was already doing. Of course, I knew that, but I knew it was wrong, but I wasn't quite sure what they called it. I wasn't quite sure what those things were. I wasn't even sure if giving extra meds and passing out during your adoption because of pills, passing out and losing the ability to see and move your arms, and having all these times where you black out and hit your head and wake up and go, what the hell just happened? I wasn't quite sure what those were. But after talking for many years about this, I understand now exactly what's going on. It's a neurological condition. I'm going to have problems moving my body for the rest of my life, but there's help out there. There's seizure medication out there. I'm on one that's working fantastic. It is. I get about an 80% improvement since the time before I started on it. That's great, but I still have a long way to go. But I want you to know, I realize that there's a U somewhere in seizure. I understand that. It was supposed to be a bigger word. When I read it on the paperwork, when I read seizure on the paperwork, it's a much different word. But when I use my spell check, it's broken. So understand, I know that I'm not spelling it right. I understand that. But my spell check won't tell me how to spell it. And when I go through my medical documents, it takes too much time. I'm always spelling seizure. I'm spelling seizure like on my different devices, on my writings, on my notes. I have to talk about it way too often. It drives me nuts that I have to deal with this, but it's something I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life. And I've already dealt with it for 25 years, so I'm getting good practice at dealing with this. I found ways to cope with having seizures on the side of the road, hitting my head 26 times and not being able to walk. It's really hard to fucking cope with those type of things. It's difficult. It is difficult. Trust me, you never want to have a seizure and then not be able to move your legs properly and your arms properly and not be able to talk. I also get caught up where I can't quite explain myself. My mind still works. I can kind of talk, but it comes out very mumbled and muttered. It's not good after a seizure. My verbal skills, my ability to move my legs, my ability to move my arms, just any output in my nervous system. But keep in mind, it's my spell check. It is my spell check that keeps on trying to misspell it. It puts it as Sezer. I'm trying to spell it with a U in there, and it comes up as nothing. But I'm going to try to look it up and memorize it again. That way I spell it correctly in the future. Because I understand that people might be confused because I'm not spelling seizure right. Even though that's not the point of any of the stuff I'm writing, any of the stuff I'm talking about. The point is that this is seriously harming my body and it needs to be handled. And the other point is that it's been happening for 25 years. Maybe not as bad as when I was a child, sorry, maybe not, maybe it's worse now than when I was a child, but there was a night where this all happened. There was a night where the ability to the ability to use my hands, talk, see, I can hear that night, I could hear. I could hear my mother, as well as my mother was giving me lots of medications and she was giving like dangerous behavior. You don't give extra medications to a child. You do not tell your child to give medication to another kid's child. You do not try to over medicate him. You do not travel him all over the country when he has diagnoses that have to be handled. You do not take him from one doctor to another. You don't yell at the doctors for the push for medication. You don't yell at your son to be schizophrenic and then when he says no, I'm not going along with it, totally have a hissy fit. This is not normal behavior from a mother. And it made my behavior affected. It really affected me. It did. Now I've processed that. I know what, happened to me is wrong. I'm willing to move on, but I need to be able to get proper medical care, and it will make it a lot faster. Things would go a lot better if people weren't in denial and making up stories. If they weren't doing those things, it would be a lot easier when I go to the doctors. But instead, they want to go in denial and make things worse for me. But just know that I realize I'm spelling it wrong. There's supposed to be more letters in there, and I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a U in there. So I'll work on spelling it better.